Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, babies and citizens, this joy to the world. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, babies and citizens, this joy to the world. I bring a message of the truth amidst a world full of lies. I graduated from learning lies to seek the truth. Indoctrinated to be too blind to see the proof. I once was lost, but now I'm found, so I shine light. And everywhere I go is darkness, so I shine bright.
Shalom from under the seven domes. The truth's not like anything that I've ever known. We living in a room with some roofs and a tomb, and the floor so flat you can see it with a level long. Cold life, it's a cold flat world with the cold light coming from the moon. Cold heart, but I listen for the voice of the bride and the voice of the bridegroom. Make your brain go boom, that's an onomatopoeia. Praise ye Yahuwah, the waters on the Rakia. Mama Mia, Mama Sai was missing for Tres Dias, but he came back resurrected with the key to free us, and I'm blessed, so I bless him. And his word is something you can invest in. He said the earth takes shape like clay to the seal when it's pressed in. Heaven stretched out like a tent to rest in. The sky is the limit. And I am Wes Blaze, and we are back again for episode 10. This is The Lesser Light. And a couple of years ago, when I first started watching the presentations from a certain ministry, I was extremely blessed by the information they were putting forth. And so I quickly reached out and let it be known that if there was anything I could do to help their efforts, I'd love to be a part of what they were doing. Because I was learning more from that ministry than I was, previously had been learning from all other ministries combined at the time. And that ministry is Kingdom in Context. So as always, I'm joined by my friend and my brother, Sean. How you doing, brother?
Hey, what's up, Wes? Yeah, I'm doing great. I'm excited for another show. Thank you for the kind words. I'm happy to hear that our videos are having some effect on some folks and helping them understand the Bible better. So it's kind of part of our mission here too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The mission statement was to help people understand how each individual aspect of the creation model relates to and fulfills, is part of the fulfillment of God's total plan of salvation for mankind. And we've only really reached the tip of the iceberg, just kind of laying the foundations, right? Getting to the basics. And that's kind of what we'll be doing tonight. We'll be sharing a lot of the basics about the lesser light in the firmament, the luminary known as the moon. And, we'll lay down a lot of those foundational understandings that people that might have already been learned in these concepts and these understandings, they might already know some of these things, but people that are really new to these understandings are going to get a lot from it. But also those experienced veterans might even find some things that they hadn't really caught on to yet from this episode as well.
We try to have a little bit for everybody, that's for sure. That way, it's the best kind of stuff you can share with your friends and family.
That's
right?
The goal.
Say you got 3 of your family members in the room. One of them's never read scripture before. The other one's deep into scripture, but they don't understand cosmology from the scriptures. That's where that third person is sitting in the room. They understand all of it. So you just have a show where we try to put all of it in there, just sprinkle it in for a well-rounded comprehension. And I'm excited about this one. This is our episode 10, The Lesser Light. We talked about the moon, one of the luminaries discussed in Genesis 1, Jubilees 2. What are your thoughts, Wes Blaze? I'm kind of excited about this episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I was saying, just some of the basic stuff. Man, there's so many things that are involved in this topic, right? We had to kind of pick and choose what are we going to say for later episodes. We're not going to get to the moon landing tonight, but we're probably going to prove and make a nice foundation for that episode when we get to it.
Yeah, that is its own episode, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But we'll be getting into the details of the creation, some of prophecy of how the moon plays out, like we did with the greater light with the sun, how the events of the end times are affecting the moon. And we'll show some scientific experiments that I'm really excited for people to see too.
Yeah, us putting together these type of little shows, these presentations where we discuss both science, experiment, observation. We go into the scriptures, we go into documentation. We got a little bit of all that this week. And people have been responding. They've been reaching out to us with kind words, telling us they have enjoyed our show. And we just want to say thank you to a few people that reached out to us in the past week or so. This is our brother, Nate Wolf, over from Fire for Truth. He was our guest last week. He just says, thanks, bro, Wes, for having me on last night. I really enjoyed the time with you and Sean and those in the live chat. I was very encouraged. All glory to the Father.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. That's why we had you on. We wanted to encourage you, wanted to lift you up, wanted more people to get to know your testimony and
right.
your your faith, the example that you're setting for others. So thank you, brother. Is this Lois? They said,
Yeah.
thank you so much. So enjoyed and blessed by your show. Much love to you, brothers. We thank you kindly.
Thank you, Lois. Appreciate it. This is Kay Caban. She says, I love this series you and Sean are doing. Thank you both for the long hours of research and sharing it with us. Hey, you're welcome.
My pleasure.
It's our pleasure. Yeah, it's so much fun to do it.
It is, because I'm reminded how it's really the compilation of years of research that I've done, that we're throwing into these episodes. And so it really is a blessing to get to share those things and have an outlet to do so.
Yeah.
Thank you, Miss Kay. What is this one? Me, Miss Yvette Trespalacious, right?
No, I gave that to you intentionally because I didn't know how to say it. Yeah.
I can now picture Yeshua rapping, she says. This old school music lover always knew that the Lord could use rap to teach people, to reach people. And I see it now. I keep getting woke. LOL, God bless you, and keep using the wonderful gift he gave you. So appreciated, Miss Yvette. That made me smile. I thank you for that. Kind words.
Yeah, thank you, Miss Yvette. Kind words. And to everyone that's in the chat, thank you guys. A lot of people in the chat right now interacting, and we hope you guys are excited for the show. Guys, if you are watching right now and you like this, hit that thumbs up. Please share it to your socials. It helps us get the word out, helps us get around the algorithms. If you're watching this and you see a little disclaimer box below the video talking about Wikipedia information, I'm not going to say the other thing involved in it, then you know that's a part of censorship. That's a label of censorship. So how we get around that is by you sharing this video on your socials. Tell people about this. Hit that thumbs up. Comment if you will. And that really helps us grow and reach new people. So we really appreciate it.
Please and thank you. Big shout out in the chat to Arc Builder CCMC. Great channel he's got. Y'all check that out. Anthony Dickinson. Good evening to you, my fam. Shalom. Miss Callie J. Ruben Aceves. Shannon Mackey. Howdy, everybody. Glad y'all could make it. We got a special shout out today, too. Was it time for that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do.
Cool. Okay, cool.
Do you want me to play this first? Do you want to talk it up or what?
Yeah, let me talk it up first. So I just wanted to say happy birthday to a very special lady, my girlfriend, Miss Morgan Cadwell. She's out in Georgia, and I just wanted to say that I really appreciate her, and I wish everybody would go check out her channel. This is a commercial she's made for a channel, Wildly Unpopular. She's already got some shadow ban going on. You got to type that Wildly Unpopular, a one word, and maybe click the channels filter to find it. But here's a teaser for her, a little commercial for her channel.
You need to wake, need to wake, need to wake up.
Used to play pretend.
Wake up.
We would build a rocket ship and then we fly far away.
Wake up.
We used to play pretend.
Wake up.
Used to dream of outer space, but now they're laughing at the face saying,
Wake up. You need to wake up. You need to
we
wake.
would build a rocket ship and then we fly far away. Saying,
Wake up. You need to wake up. You need to wake.
we used to play pretend.
Wake up.
Used to dream of outer space.
This is going to get interesting.
Awesome channel, guys. She's got a cool video called What Are Demons? She's got one about what did David say about the law in the Psalms. She's got one called It's Flat Jack. She's got a part 2 to that talking about Sheol. Some great shows on there. So definitely check out her presentations, and happy birthday to Miss Morgan.
Awesome. Happy birthday. That's exciting. Turning 21 again. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm officially to that level where I've turned 39 a couple times now, so it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling. Yeah. When I was younger, we had this pastor that was like, he must have been like 70, and every year he would celebrate his 39th birthday. It was hilarious.
Yeah. I'll be there not too long from now. Okay.
Yeah.
Less than a decade.
Yeah, he actually spit his teeth out one sermon and caught them midair right in front of himself. Like a ninja, like a 70-year-old ninja, and then put him right back in and just kept preaching. And I was like, all right, he can keep that 39 label if he wants. That was pretty amazing.
It was epic. That sounds
like yeah.
Good times. Good
Pretty
times,
crazy.
brother. I'm excited to get into the show. What do we got first, brother?
Well, I think first we just wanted to run through some of the scriptures, right? We just wanted to kind of set the stage for how the Father describes his creation, because that, to me, that's like the most important part. So I'm glad that you always want to go over these first.
Yes, sir. I surely do. I'll start us off. This is Psalm written by David, chapters 104, verse 19. And he says, he made the moon to mark the seasons The sun knows when to set. What was that season's word there in Hebrew? Do you recall?
Pretty sure it's the Moedim,
Yeah.
which we have. I think it's the next one, Sirach. So you'll probably get to that one. But yeah,
Cool.
it's here's the thing about it. It is Moedims, but I think it is an interchangeable Hebrew word. But in the Sirach passage, I think it clarifies to even let you know it means feast days and not just the 4 seasons of the year.
Okay.
So, but the cool thing about this is, if we're taking seriously the Book of Jubilees, that means the new moon celebrations also would mark the change of the seasons every 91 days.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it makes perfect sense, and that's also why they would be called new moon days, new month days. But it's every 91 days those happen. So that's outlined in Jubilees and Enoch.
Absolutely. We'll get into a little bit of calendar discussion, some lightly touch the subject, but
never enough for the audience though. No. Apparently when it comes to the calendar discussion, at least my audience, I've noticed they could just have a 24-hour live stream going continually. And I'm like, what happens if you ever actually find the right calendar? Will people stop wanting to talk about it? No, never.
No. No, that's all right though. We praise God for the restoration that happens at the second coming.
Yes, we'll have the calendar absolutely explained to us. But here in Psalm 136, verse 7 through 9, Yahweh is also expounding that he made the great lights. His loving devotion endures forever. And I think this is fitting that this kind of chorus-like hymn structure of this psalm is speaking about these things that he made eternal. And then it has this little interlude of his loving and devotion endures forever. Because the moon and the great lights, he said they'll be there forever. Like they're not going away. So another thing that would contradict the heliocentric description of creation. The heliocentric evolutionary model, they claim that the sun and moon are going away, that there was, that eventually there will be a heat death within our solar system as our sun goes supernova.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not what scripture teaches. Nope. So instead, these are the lights made in the firmament, Genesis 1:14 through 19, and that the Yahweh calls them eternal. And he goes on to say his loving the sun is to rule the day, his loving devotion endures forever, the moon and stars to govern the night. His loving devotion endures forever.
Yes, it does. 3 times.
That's right.
This is Sirach. Now, this is also known as Ecclesiasticus. You might even see it in some Bibles as Ben Sirach. However, in chapter 43, verses 6 through 9, the author says, "And then the moon, ever punctual, to mark the times, an everlasting sign. It is the moon that signals the feasts, a luminary that wanes after being full. The month derives its name from hers. She waxes wonderfully in her phases, banner of the Most High, of the hosts on high, shining in the vault of heaven. The glory of the stars, in the vault of heaven. The glory of the stars makes the beauty of the sky, a brilliant adornment of the Lord on high." That's pretty.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah, we got the interesting concept as the writer of Sirach, or if you're Hispanic, Sirachi, it uses this term waxes, right? That's actually a modern term we still use in reference to the phases of the moon today, the waxing, the waning process. But he talks about the placement of this thing that not only signals it's an everlasting sign, it's not going away.
Yeah.
It signals the feasts. We already talked about this Jubilee 6 every 91 days. It's the start of a new moon, a new month. You're going to have the new moons. The moons are involved in this as it coordinates with the sun throughout the year, but also it tells you the placement. It's in the vault of the heaven. So
it does.
We talked about the shape of the firmament in previous episodes, and it seems like they're all vaulted. Is that right? Yeah,
vaulted dome. In fact, I wanted to read real quick that Ecclesiasticus in a King James version says it a little differently. "He made the moon also to serve in her season for a declaration of times and a sign of the world. From the moon is the sign of feasts, a light that decreaseth in her perfection. The month is called after her name, increasing wonderfully in her changing, being an instrument of the armies above, shining in the firmament of heaven." So that is that firmament, the vault of heaven.
Yeah, it's so important to know what the Father made, his cosmology, so that you don't get confused by the enemy. Here in Mark 13:24, "But in those days after the tribulation, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from the sky, the powers of the heavens will be shaken." What's your thought on this?
Yeah, we see parallels of that all throughout the prophets, that this is the day of the Lord. It says after that tribulation, right? And so we know the seventh trumpet marks the end of the tribulation, and that Yeshua returns there, and that a bunch of things are happening in the events leading up to it and on that day.
That's right. And I
Some
think
of which
that's
we
kind
talked
of
about. Mhm.
this kind of expounds a little bit on that time period here in Matthew 24. Do you want these two slides?
Sure. So Matthew 24, 22 through 26. If those days had not been cut short, nobody would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short. At that time, if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there he is, do not believe it. For the false Christs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders that would deceive even the elect if that were possible. See, I have told you in advance. So if they tell you, there he is in the wilderness, do not go out, or here he is in the inner rooms, do not believe it. For just as the lightning comes from the east and flashes as far as the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Wherever there is a carcass, there the vultures will gather. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. So a parallel there in what we just read in Mark, and it's noteworthy to mention here that the moon is described as something that will not give its light. Jesus
right.
didn't say here that the moon will stop reflecting the sun's light, did he?
No. No, because rocks, even if the heliocentric model was true, rocks don't reflect light. I mean, unless they're made of shiny substance, but that's not what they tell us, right? They say it's made of white powder.
Right. It's like a dust ball.
Yeah, it doesn't. It would not be reflecting light the way they've explained. But the creator tells us the moon is not a dust ball in space. It's not formerly a part of the Earth that broke off and somehow got locked in some sort of geostationary gravitational orbit that makes no sense and supposedly is leaving that orbit at 2 feet per year every year. None of that nonsense, because that's not what's described by the creator from what he made.
No, sir. Hey, could you go back to the first part of this slide? The day of the Lord is, there it is. If those days had not been cut short, nobody would be saved. I find that might parallel, and I'd like to get your thoughts on it real quick, that it might have something to do with what the Apocalypse of Baruch says in chapter 20, verse 1. He says, therefore, behold, the days come, and the times shall hasten more than the former, and the seasons shall speed on more than those that are past, and the years shall pass more quickly than the present years. Could that be what Christ is referring to there?
It could be. It could be. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the fuller context of that passage and Apocalypse of Baruch.
We can move on then, but Christ just says that the days shortened, and it makes you wonder. It sounds like a shorter period of time, maybe a faster, time scale there. But then Baruch comes out and says straightforward, the years are going to move faster. So from what it seems to me,
in a biblical cosmology, would that be assuming that the sun and moon are suddenly start speeding up in their progression?
That's what it begs the question of to me.
I'd have to study it more. I don't know. We haven't actually. I remember that part in Apocalypse of Baruch, but I don't remember being alarmed to that idea when I was reading it. So I'd have to go back and read it again, take a deeper look. It's a good idea. It's interesting.
Cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's the thought, though.
Yeah.
If in Joshua 10, if he stopped the sun and moon to give more time, could he speed them up to shorten the days?
Nothing is impossible. Right?
It's interesting, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So in Isaiah 13, 9 through 11, this kind of also parallels the same idea about when the Messiah returns, we're going to get this, the luminaries will stop producing their light to some degree here. And it says in Isaiah 13, 9 through 11, behold, the day of the Lord is coming. It's cruel, with fury and burning anger, to make the earth a desolation and to destroy the sinners within it. For the stars of heaven and their constellations will not give their light. The rising sun will be darkened. The moon will not give its light. I will punish the world for its evil, and the wicked for their iniquity. I will end the haughtiness of the arrogant and lay low the pride of the ruthless. Yeah, and this is a blanket statement. I just want to encourage folks. A lot of people will see things like this, and they'll say, look, he's going to burn the entire earth. Guys, if that was true, there would be no survivors for him to gather in Matthew 25:31 after he sets down and gathers all the nations to him. So this is one of those deals where the word earth in the Hebrew is this word aretz, which can mean the whole world, but it can mean the land that's being contextually referenced in these passages. So the contextual land that's always being referenced on the day of the Lord is where the New Jerusalem is going to set down, the promised land to Abraham from the Euphrates to the Nile, this big swath section of the Middle East, that's where he returns to fight on the day, the Battle of Armageddon, to clear out that land, and that land will be fully burned with fire in preparation for it to be cleansed so the New Jerusalem can set down. The entire earth, yes, there will be cities that were on fire from war, as the Apocalypse of Baruch tells us in chapter 27, and there will be a mass earthquake, but as far as every piece of land on the plane of the earth being burnt, that's not the context of the prophecy of the coming of the Lord.
Right. And man, the survivors of the nations, mortal survivors of the day of the Lord is a whole nother episode in itself, I hope, because there's that third group of people that hardly anybody gets taught about or mentioned.
That's right.
At least I had never heard of it. That, we always know that there's the people that get saved, that receive the resurrection, right? The eternal life, John 3:16 moment. And then you get these people that are taken out by the brightness of his coming, the wicked that are slain, the angels uproot them. But then there's this third group of people that nobody talks about, like I said, is there's mortal survivors that neither make that resurrection nor are they taken out with the lot of the wicked. And so that's going to be a fascinating topic to look into in the future too.
That's right. That is the fulfillment of Romans 15 when the Gentiles put their hope in the Savior. It's also Isaiah 42. So yes, that's that wonderful fulfillment model. We'll go over it in future episodes in great detail, because it's going to happen only inside the biblical creation model. So yeah, that's why it matters.
That's right.
You want this one?
Sure. Joel 2:10-11. Before them, the earth quakes, the heavens tremble, the sun and moon grow dark, and the stars lose their brightness. The Lord raises his voice in the presence of his army. Indeed, his camp is very large, for mighty are those who obey his command. For the day of the Lord is great and very dreadful. Who can endure it? Great for the people that, make the covenant resurrection, and dreadful for those that don't, for sure.
That's right. Yeah. Just if you're watching this, repent, put your faith in Yeshua, get into covenant, get grafted in. And that way you don't have to worry about any of this, because you'll be spared this wrath of the Lamb on that day. But Wes, this is what, our third confirmation now between Isaiah and Matthew, our third here in Joel, saying that the sun and moon will grow dark and lose their brightness along with the stars. So if these are lights that were put in the vaulted of the firmament to shine down upon the earth, and when he comes back, he's basically turning the lights off. It's, this is funny, because isn't this what you see in movies when like some elite squad of like some SEAL team is about to go and they're about to infiltrate a building? They go cut the power to the building, they put on their night vision goggles, and they go in.
Yeah, that's a good depiction. It's a good analogy for sure.
So Yahweh's like, all right, I'm going to send my son.
Right?
Exactly, like a thief in the night, right? He's going to send his son some angels. He's like, all right, turn off the lights and send my son and all those angels, because they actually emanate light from themselves with their glorified immortal resurrection body, or at least Yeshua. The angels were created that way from the beginning. So they actually don't need lights. They literally can turn on the light anywhere they are and be okay. But what's crazy, though, is that they're going to come back and it's just going to be mass chaos for the people trying to fight them, which is why there's a decisive victory and nobody can stand against the Lord. Like it says here in Joel 2:11, who can endure it? Nobody can. And this is the part where the enemy in vain, they plot against the Lord, try to withstand this day, but they won't be able to.
I get excited when you start talking about the makeup and chemistry of the angelic bodies and how they can manipulate the creation, they can exude light and all kinds of things that they can do, because I know Christ says that we'll be made like the angels in the resurrection. Right. And so look forward to Resurrected Superhumans episode, who knows what yet.
That's right. Revelation 6:12-17. When I saw the Lamb open the sixth seal, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black like sackcloth of goat hair. The whole moon turned blood red. The stars of the sky fell to the earth like unripe figs dropping from a tree shaken by a great wind. The sky receded like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved from its place. The kings of the earth, the nobles, the commanders, the rich, the mighty, and every slave and free man hid in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains. They said to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us, hide us from the face of the one seated on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of their wrath has come. Who is able to withstand it? Yeah,
vivid imagery. Firmament rolling open like a scroll. What?
That's right.
That's going to be unlike anything anybody's ever seen.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it says the kings of the earth, the nobles, the commanders. I'm pretty sure that would include like the hierarchy up there at NASA, you know?
Yeah. But the moon turns to blood here. So
Hmm.
is it the same thing as when we see the moon diminishing, not giving her light? Is it the same event happening here when it turns to blood as well?
As opposed to going through like the monthly cycle of the new moon?
Yeah, well, I'm just talking about here in prophecy where it's talking about that the moon, basically, I envision when it says the moon stops giving her light, that it just goes black, that you just can't see it like a new moon, maybe, yeah. But then when it says here that the moon turns to blood, is it two different things, or are we talking about the same event?
To me, the exact moment that's, I think there's a lot of, okay, so this is where there's a lot of details involved in the coming of the Lord. You got to put a lot of scriptures together to get a coherent chronological picture. As we talked about in previous episodes with the greater light in the sun episode, we talked about the different prophecies from Revelation, Isaiah 30, about the sun diminishing, but then also the sun and the moon getting 7 times as bright at one point as well.
Right. Yes, sir.
Because when you have a power surge through things that are lit up through power flowing through the firmament, just like with the light bulb, sometimes before it bursts, it goes brighter before it diminishes. Same thing with all of the earth that's being on fire. That's usually what causes, unless there's an actual eclipse, the moon will go red with the type of cloud cover caused by a fire, because then it looks like I don't know if you've ever seen that before or not, with like a huge land fire. We had one when I used to live in Tulsa back in 2012. There was a fire that burned like 90,000 acres on the west side of Tulsa, and the whole city was covered in smoke. So dense, the sun was like a point of light in the sky, and the moon was blood red every single night. And it was like that for 3 or 4 nights. It was really strange. But that's one option as far as the mass smoke that's happening all over the earth from all the cities that are on fire. That's happening with the warfare and the massive earthquake that happens at this time. In addition to the cloud cover that Zephaniah 1 talks about as well. So that way you would also have diminished light before things actually happen with them, just from the view I guess what I'm trying to get at is some of these verses are from the perspective of Yahweh, what he's going to do. Some of these verses from the perspective of the viewer on the ground and what they're going to witness and observe. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that helps a lot, especially talking about the fire, the smoke, and what that causes. Because I did see a lot of, when the fires were going on in California and the West Coast there for a while, you saw a lot of pictures like that of the sun and moon. Yeah,
definitely. It'll be a hectic day. There's a lot going on.
I got this.
Do you want this one?
Yeah, Jubilee 636. For there will be those who will assuredly make observations of the moon, how it disturbs the seasons and comes in from year to year, 10 days too soon. So that's a rather specific, numbered amount of days. It says the moon comes in every year from year to year, too soon, 10 days. So I'd be curious to see if there's a way that we can confirm. A lot of people kind of disregard Jubilees. It's kind of a tradition from modern Judaism to say that Jubilees isn't inspired scripture or it shouldn't be treated as such. But I found that this has fact behind it that can still be observed today.
That's right. Yeah.
What do you think?
When I was having my discussion with the guys from My House Ministries, I'm pretty sure Micah said he was charting he's in like year 3 or 4 of charting the moon and the sun. And he was noticing, the sun comes in 10 days too early. So this is why, in fact, if I'm not mistaken, this is one of the reasons why Judaism's calendar, they have to add a 13th month every so often.
Yeah.
Because they're not doing the calculations laid out in Enoch and Jubilees to accommodate for these 10 days that are lost every year, because the moon's on a slightly faster rotation than the sun in the sky above us.
True.
Yeah.
And if you look up right now, well, I think we're going to get to the length of a year here in a second. But real quick, if you look up the length of a lunar year, according to modern secular science, they'll tell you that the amount of phases of the moon, how long it takes to get through a full lunar year, is 354 days. That's now, right. Even though they say that the lunar year, or whatever the year of the calendar that we keep, is 365 days, we'll see here in a second why the 10 days difference still matters.
That's right. So here is the next one. Here we have 1 Enoch 59:5. He showed me the power of the moon's light, that its power is a just one, as well as the division of the stars, according to their respective names. 1 Enoch 59:5.
Nice.
Yeah.
The power of the moon's light. It's a just one, like a righteous one.
That's right. So Enoch actually gives a full-on breakdown about how the light of the moon is transferred back and forth between the sun and the moon throughout increments of 14 days. So it's pretty amazing.
Names. There's 4 names here in First Enoch 77:2, and he says the moon has 4 names. The first is Asanya, the second Ebla, the third Benez, and the fourth Array. That's something that really blew my mind. I'd never heard of. Why does it have 4 names? I know there's, in modern secular science, they say that every full moon of every month has a certain name, right? The cold moon, the strawberry moon. But this is something else, right?
Well, if we take the verses that we just previously read from Sirach and from the Psalms, talking about the moon marking the festivals and the seasons, we also cross-reference it with Jubilee 6 and how Noah called these new moon months every 91 days a festival that he honored as a memorial, the events of the flood that he went through. To me, this is the only thing I can think of, is that these would be the marker, if you will, to denote those 91-day periods. And so, the first 3 months, or the first 91 days, would be Asanya, Ebla, Benez, and Array, just going throughout the year.
Yeah,
that's the best I can make of that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I guess back then they would just look up and say, "Oh, it's spring. That's Asanya up there." No, next, in the winter, that's Array, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder. Okay, now that might be a tangent. I'll stay off of that. But
that's all right.
First Enoch 80, verse 2. Then I looked on all which was written, and understood all, reading the book and everything written in it, all the works of man.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is just the passage that Enoch is summarizing at the end of him explaining the sun and the moon. Again, guys, we kind of have to make a decision when we were doing these slides on how much of the 10 full chapters of the book of Enoch we're going to include. Otherwise, it would just be a 2-hour show of us reading 10 chapters of the book of Enoch. We can't do that. We don't have time for that. So please go home and read the book of Enoch yourself.
Check out the book of the Courses of the Heavenly Luminaries. Good stuff.
That's right. Because when Enoch is being shown all this and he wrote it down, he understood it, he was shown it, means he read it in a book that's in heaven, then he wrote it down himself so he could pass it on to Noah. That's actually explained a little bit better. This is why Noah would understand all these things, as we see in Jubilees chapter 6, and start talking about the moon, referencing its days. And as we just see right here in this next passage, he would also know this, because this is validated between Noah talking about this in Jubilee 6, which Moses reads about from the angel, versus where Noah got this information from his great-grandfather Enoch. That's why, just letting you know, Enoch understood, wrote down all these things, and that's being passed down from Noah to Shem to Abraham, all the way down to Moses. So
they had scriptures back in those days. They had a Bible, more or less, right?
That's right. Yeah, they're not just looking up at the sky and making this stuff up. So they actually were instructed on how to understand these things.
Mm-hmm. Tablets from heaven with literal writings.
Yes.
Crazy stuff. Is it my turn to read this one? First Enoch 71:42. At that period, the night becomes shortened. It is 9 parts, and the night is equal with the day. The year is precisely 364 days. Huh. So we've been taught by, the Gregorian calendar. I don't know how much the Julian calendar have. The Gregorian has the 365, and they even, get technical to say that it's really 365.1592 or something like that, so that they have to add that leap day on a leap year every 4 years. And so this straight up tells us that God intended the year to be complete at 364 days, 1 day shorter than in modernity. That's right. And so that goes back to what I was talking about a minute ago with the lunar year, and how Jubilee 6 tells us that the moon comes in 10 days too soon. And so if the lunar year can be recorded as 354 days, God's year, 364 days, there's that 10-day difference of the moon coming in too soon.
And someone in the audience, Michael John, beat me to it. And he's talking about just the math of 364 is divisible by 7.
It is.
And this is why, guys, I know there's a lot of people out there shouting conspiracy about how, the day used to have 8 days in it. The day used to have 9 days in it. The day used to have 4 days in it. There's all kinds of people out there shouting all types of conspiracy that the Romans changed it to how do you know the 7th day is the actual Sabbath? How do you know that wasn't changed? Guys, literally it's in the math. If you don't want to believe that Genesis 2 is legit and that he hallowed the 7th day and sanctified it as a Sabbath, the creator himself, before it was instructed for mankind to observe as a rest day. I mean, if you don't want to believe Genesis 1 and 2, just summarizing the 7 days of creation, well, it's also just simply in the math.
It is.
So,
And I knew this topic was going to come up, so I just got to say real quick, like there's over 100 languages in which the name for the day that we currently call Saturday, the seventh day of the week, and the word that they use for Sabbath, rest, is the same exact word in over 100 languages, right? In Spanish, it's sabado. I'm sorry. In German, I think it's sabtu, and there's just over 100 words. Sounds just like that. And the what is it? The U.S. Naval Observatory, for what it's worth, says the sequence of the days of the week have not been altered in the last 2,000 years. You can also go through, I got a list of quotes of Roman historians and different historians from right there, BC and then AD, within 100 years or so, that are all talking about how the Israelites were recorded to have been honoring the day that they called Saturn's Day, right? We call it Saturday today, but they called that day Saturn's Day. The Roman historians did. They observed, recorded the Israelites keeping that day as their Shabbat, as their rest day, before and after Christ walked the earth. So if it was wrong, I just would feel like Christ would have been saying something about it, since he is the Lord of the Sabbath.
yeah, he definitely called out the Pharisees on a lot of their other non-scriptural behaviors. So that would have been interesting for him to just leave that out, being that it's a sign of the covenant. It's not just, I mean, it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not Seventh-day Adventists, don't get us wrong, but I can understand why they stress, this idea, because unfortunately they don't stress the rest of the covenant behavior, but they do definitely like the Sabbath. And to me, it's just like the Father said, look, I'm going to give you two signs, right? You got this sign of a day of rest and then you also got this outward sign of circumcision. We're not talking about circumcision right now. That's just for men anyway, but men and women, children, all ages, ladies and gentlemen, everybody, right? You can observe the day of rest as a sign of covenant. And it's a wonderful thing that the Father gave you. And it blows my mind how you could try to say that it somehow hinders your walk with the Father, or you being as a Christian, like you following Yeshua, how it could possibly distract you from the truth of Yeshua when he observed it and he told us to keep all those commandments, which is including taking this day of rest. So to me, it's a beautiful thing that both the moon and the sun, they have this pattern here that Enoch and Jubilees are trying to tell us, look, you can calculate these patterns. The sun, it's divisible by 7. The moon, you're losing 10 days every year. I'm letting you know ahead of time because it goes faster than the sun. So therefore, you're going to have to do some backwards counting every 3 years so that you can correct itself. So again, unfortunately, we didn't have time to go into all of Enoch that expounds up in this. Please go check out in the book of First Enoch, chapter 70, 72 through 82. So here it is in First Enoch 81:7, talking again that the year is completed in 364 days.
That's right.
And it's even validated again here in Jubilee 6:32.
He does. He says, and command thou the children of Israel that they observe the years according to this reckoning, 364 days. And these will constitute a complete year, and they will not disturb its time from its days and from its feasts. For everything will fall out in them according to their testimony, and they will not leave out any day nor disturb any feasts. If they did that. Yeah.
Right. With it. So we have two different testimonies, Jubilees and Enoch, trying to tell us that the sum of the entirety of the day is 364 days in a year. And what's interesting is Enoch even breaks it down further to talk about how there's 360 days, but once you add those 4 intercalary days, which happens every 3 months, that's where those 91 days comes from, as we recommended or we referenced earlier. So every 3 months, there's that extra day. They call that 91st day. That you add those up 4 times a year, you get 364. And this is how, if the Father's feasts were all set on these timings. And so it's basically, so you don't have to guess. Unfortunately, we've kind of lost the correct application of this throughout time with all the different calendar changes. But this is why Wes and I joked earlier about when Yeshua returns, we're all going to be set straight again. The luminaries, they've been given an eternal pattern in the heavens. We'll be able to understand all these things and know exactly what day we're supposed to do this and that. So, I mean, the reason I say that, Wes, is because so many people, my wife is one of these, right? She wants to have the calendar set. She wants to know, like, when is this day? When can I plan for this day? let's look at it 3-4 months in advance so she can plan stuff, especially if you need to make a meal that day, right? And she's the cook. So this is just one of those deals where think about the mindset that you got to be in, where you're thinking, okay, the Father told me that there's going to be a feast day that's coming up in 2 months. I need to be remembering that. You know what I mean? So when the Father says in Deuteronomy 32, Deuteronomy 27, and a whole bunch of other places where he's talking about, you'll be blessed if you remember all these instructions I'm giving you and you practice them. Well, that requires actively remembering them.
Sure.
Right. So this to me is where he gave us a wonderful calendar so that he can be on our minds throughout the year.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. I just want to lovingly remind people that don't let these calendar discussions turn into unloving debates. Don't let it be a point of contention. Like we all really just relatively, most of us just found out about keeping the feast days. And then we're coming to the understanding that there's all these different calendars out there. It's really meticulous to try to determine when the beginning of the year is and when we should count for certain things. But ultimately, like we've been saying, it will all be restored at the resurrection, and we will all be able to get back on the same track with it. And so for now, we should just do the best we can. You could definitely find the calendar that your favorite ministry works with or the calendar that you're most comfortable with, but don't downplay other people's choice, because it's really, nobody can say for sure that they're doing it the right day or that they're doing it in the right way, because we don't have the temple to go to. So we're practicing. This is a practice, rehearsals for the big ones to come when the kingdom comes.
And you're talking about the yearly feasts and festivals, not the weekly Sabbath, right?
Correct. Yeah. That was it. Yeah. The feast.
So
depended on the calendar. Yep. The calendars. Yeah. I'll take this one. This was Jubilee 638. For this reason, I command and testify to you that you may testify to them. For after your death, your children will disturb them, so that they will not make the year 364 days only. And for this reason, they will go wrong as to the new moons and seasons and Sabbaths and festivals, and they will eat all kinds of blood with all kinds of flesh. Have mercy.
Yeah. So we got more validation to the timing of the year, 364 days. And also he just talks about when they lose track of that idea, they will be mixed in with them losing track of the other behaviors that the covenant says, you should do, which is you should not eat all kinds of blood. You should not eat all kinds of flesh. And that, unfortunately, is what we see, is that people lose sight of basic instructions the Father gave them to observe his covenant behavior. And it's more than just losing track of the proper feast days, because they also lose track of other instructions, which are repeated by the disciples in Acts 15 to new converts.
Yeah.
Which is, I think that's interesting, Wes. In Acts 15, he doesn't, like when, we have all these new converts that Barnabas and Paul are asking James and Peter and John, the elders of the disciple in Jerusalem, and they're asking the disciples, like, hey man, we're making all these new converts. What do we need to teach them first? We got these antagonistic Pharisees that are running around saying we need to circumcise people first. And that's not what James and John and Peter decided, right? They were like, no, we need to teach them these things first. They started repeating stuff that's don't eat blood, don't eat animals that are strangled, don't eat that kind of stuff. Did he say, did Peter, James, and John say we need to teach them the calendar first? That's the most important thing. And which days are the Sabbaths and feast days?
No, they did not. No, in fact, they were noticing what those specific Gentiles, what they were struggling with and dealing with most, having been surrounded in the pagan cultures and concepts that they were dealing with. And then it goes on to say, Acts 15:21, that for the law of Moses has been preached in every city from the earliest times and is read in the synagogues every Sabbath. That it does go on to say that the Gentiles that are trying to come into covenant, those of the nations that want to be a part of Israel, are coming to the synagogues to hear the word of Moses being read and the law, and to get caught up on the rest of it, right? Yeah,
that's right. Every Sabbath. How interesting. So now here's when we look at the this idea of lunar eclipses. This is, one second here. Let me make sure I got the right slide real quick. Did you want to actually right now? Did you want to discuss? This is the right slide. I think we wanted to put up real quick. 1 second.
You're good. So many different topics.
We've tried to. Yeah, how do we? Which one do we go to first? That's not it. That's not it.
The temperature.
I don't know why I did that. Well, I thought you wanted to address this just real quick before we go into some of the videos.
Okay.
This was the one where, because this is a huge question we get all the time.
Okay.
Which is people say, okay, look, if the Bible describes a plane of the earth that's encircled by, what we would call Antarctica, it's enclosed by a firmament in the dome-shaped structure, then how do they see the moon from different parts of the plane of the earth?
Yeah.
Would you like to address this one?
Sure. Yeah, really quickly, I had something that I wrote to you that makes sense with that. And I said, noteworthy to mention here, despite how they say the moon phases are caused, the same moon phase can be seen simultaneously from different countries that are said to be on opposite sides of the alleged globe, right? So you got like United States, and then they say that Australia is basically on the other side, on the bottom. So opposite sides of this alleged ball that we're supposed to be on. And then the only thing observed to be different is the orientation, which it is seen from the two perspectives, which is exactly what we should expect on a flat plane, like looking at a picture on the ceiling from different sides of the room. So imagine you've painted a picture, or you got a picture printed out of the moon, you put it up on the ceiling. If you go to the east side of your room, put your back towards the wall, look up at the ceiling at that picture, you're going to see the moon in an orientation facing you the way it is. Go to the other side of the room, put your back facing the other wall. Now you've turned around completely 180, looking at the same picture. It's upside down based on what you saw on the other side. The same thing is happening. We're looking at a ceiling. The luminaries are fixed inside of it.
That's right. That's right. It's kind of an easy answer, but like I said, we got something for all levels of knowledge on this episode. Just trying to go cover some of the basics as well as some of the more advanced stuff. So here's another basic idea. A lot of people fail to think about. We're not taught to think about this, right? Whenever we look at the moon.
Right. Yeah. Just the idea that a solid object, whether it be made of rock, whether it be made of dust, definitely not cheese, but if you got a solid object that's spherical in nature, you try to shine a light at it. Okay. If it's any kind of spherical, like they say the moon is, then in natural observable reality, what you can record and measure and see with your own eyes is that there's a specular highlight, and then there's shading that happens as a result. So now if they say that the moon is this spherical rock, dust ball, whatever it is, they say that the sun is then shining onto, then where's that specular highlight? Why don't we get the same exact shading that happens when you can record from other spherical objects shining light on it? And how is it lit from tip to tip, from edge to edge, the way it is?
Yeah, there's no bright spot at all. It's uniform. And even when it goes through its phases, those phases are uniform, which is crazy.
That's right.
That's not the way light would normally fall onto a curved circular ball surface. So
it's not pretty. And when in reality can we observe that if you shine hot light at something that's reflective, can you get anything other than hot light reflected off of that? So I'm thinking of when you got a magnifying glass, right? Kids back in the day when they were little, they'd take the magnifying glass outside and go mess with ants and stuff. But the point was you're holding it under the sunlight and focusing that sunlight through a reflective lens that then focuses and concentrates that heat. And it actually can make it hotter than it just feels touching your skin, right? You can focus that heat. So when can you get it any other temperature lower from reflecting that? And so we're going to find out here pretty quickly that is the case with the lesser light. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. Did you want to, before we do the lesser light video, did you want to go over the Internet NASA technical report server or the cold light from Fireflies? Did you want to review those things before the video? That's all in the video. That's all in the video now.
Okay. My bad. So I didn't know you sent me some of those. I'll just go ahead and cue that up real quick.
It'll be a surprise for you as well.
All right, guys.
Let's check it out. I got another video.
The NASA technical report servers are back at it again. In this public document from the Lunar and Planetary Science Conference in 2009 at the NASA Johnson Space Center, NASA.gov gives another nod to an aspect of creation we weren't taught about in school. The paper is titled Photon Luminescence of the Moon and begins by explaining that Luminescence is typically described as light emitted by objects at low temperatures. Although the author continues on to describe a photon luminescence induced by galactic cosmic rays, he concludes the introduction by stating that the information derived here demonstrates that the moon literally glows in the dark when there is no sunlight or earthshine. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to conclude that this report is referring to the moon as self-illuminating and emitting a light at low temperature. This sort of phenomenon isn't unfamiliar to God's creation. The Department of Entomology and Nematology at the University of Florida explains, fireflies produce a chemical reaction inside their bodies, allowing them to light up through a process called bioluminescence. And, unlike a light bulb, which produces a lot of heat in addition to light, a firefly's light is cold. Apart from the consistent message of the Bible describing the moon as a light, is there another way we can confirm this cold luminescence from the moon? Here is a compilation of independent experiments testing the temperatures of moonlit surfaces compared to shaded surfaces. Keep in mind that in sunlight, we know the shade is much cooler. Check it out.
Okay, here we are. There's the moon. There's the side that's in the moonlight. 37 degrees in the moonlight. 47 degrees in the not moonlight. So what is that? There's nothing covering over top of this. It's just sitting right out here in the open. One side's in the moonlight, one side's not. So how, if that moon's reflecting sunlight, is it reflecting cold light? Moon shadow, moonlight, moonlight, moon shadow.
Moonlight test. Got a plain piece of cardboard, piece of aluminium. As you can see, the moon is 95% tonight. Test in the shade of concrete, it's about 11 and a half. In light, about 9. Final test for the cardboard in the shade, about 7 degrees. And in light, about 3 aluminium. In the shade, 8 degrees Celsius. In the light, pretty much 0.
Moon shade 7.0, moonlight 6.2. Let's go over here. Moonlight 5.8, moon shade 6.7.
It's the Moonlight Cools experiment once again, the second time. Our beaming moonlight. We have our T-post driver. We have box which has been shading it from the moonlight. This time we have a infrared thermometer. Should be a little more accurate. Let's see what we get this time. Alright, the exposed side is reading 37.9. Let's go ahead and start moving that towards the side that has been shaded. Let's climb. Hold that. 42.6.
Okay, here's a video a lot of people wanted me to make. Sounds really crazy. I'm using a FLIR, forward-looking infrared device, and it is an extremely clear night with a extremely bright full moon. There goes a car down the road. Huh? You can actually still see the brakes on my tires are a little warm there. So, got a full moon and we've got a shadow. So let's do, in the light of the full moon, 16 degrees Fahrenheit, 16 degrees Fahrenheit, 13, 12, 12. Yeah, okay. Here we are in the shadow. You can't see the shadow, but I am absolutely pointing it in the shadow. 22 degrees average, 22, 21, 22. Let's go outside. 18, 19. This is in the moonlight. 20, 19, 19. Also in the moonlight over here. 17, 15, 14. And this is in the shadow right here. Here's the base of the shadow. The base of the shadow, of course, since the moon's been rising, is the spot, yeah, right here, 24, 23 degrees. I'll make sure I'm in the shadow. Yeah, there we go. 19 degrees. 18, 17. Also in the moonlight. So, there you go. Yeah, there's the reflection. Hey, waving at my reflection. There you go. So let me do this again over here while I'm standing in the shadow. Be super precise. Okay. I'm in the shadow. Am I in the shadow? No, I was not. There we go. Yeah, I am. 18, 19 degrees, 19 degrees, 19.7, 19.8. In the moonlight, 16 degrees, 15 degrees. Also in the moonlight, 17, 17. Well, what do you know? What do you know? Yeah, it's warmer in the shadow. Yes, absolutely no trickery going on here. It is an extremely bright moon out and the sky is crystal clear. Warmer in the shadow.
This is West Blaze, and thanks for watching Uncommon Ground. God bless.
Cold flat world with the cold light coming from the moon. Shout out Marlo for the beat on that one. Appreciate you, Marlo Eugene. Y'all check out his music. Go subscribe, Marlo Eugene. How'd you like that, Sean?
Yeah, that's, to me, it's hard to, for most people, it's hard for them to grasp the idea that light could produce a cool sensation, because everyone's thought always, even when it comes to just taking a magnifying glass and burning some ants, because they always think light equals heat. But that's because that's what they've been told from heliocentric sun worshippers.
Right. And even their science, they have a distinction that they admit. And if you look deep enough, like we did with the NASA Technical Report Server there, they even admit that the moon itself is luminescent of sorts. But there's the difference of incandescence versus luminescence, whereas incandescence just put off heat like a light bulb. And luminescence, there's a variety of forms of it, right? They talked about photon luminescence. There's the bioluminescence that certain animals and even plant life underwater and stuff can put off. So that kind of luminescence, because life can often emit it, they want it to not, or the creator wanted it to not consume energy. So instead of putting off heat, it can often put off low temperatures or cold light even. And so that's what our moon does.
Prodigal Son said insta chill.
Yeah.
For some weird reason, it just reminds me of the old Batman movie where Arnold Schwarzenegger was Mr. Freeze, and he's like, chill, and he starts freezing people with the gun. Just every time you step out on the moon, just chill. Anyway,
that's what I'm gonna start doing now. Yeah, and it's interesting too that people know, and they've known since ancient times, that if you're slaying an animal and skinning it, preparing it for whatever means, you put it out in the sunlight, it's going to dry it. It's going to make that skin leathery. Whereas if you leave decomposing matter or whatever the case in moonlight, it's often putrefying. So you have a very opposite effect even in that matter, in that sense. Yeah,
they're still studying light, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
For them to try to figure out what light is and how it interacts with stuff. But it's funny because talking about different types of bioluminescence, it makes me laugh because it's like, to a certain degree, even our bodies, we glow. Depends on our attitude, our demeanor. It depends on, we can glow. Now, in severe cases, like with Moses being around a bunch of immortal angels, he really glowed.
Literally.
Right? He took that energy, and I think that I don't have the info prepared, but I do remember reading a report 10 something years ago about people doing tests with light on DNA and how it would actually absorb the light and then let it back off again. So it basically, there's a sense of bioluminescence that's even possible within the very core of your cellular structure and your DNA. So your body's was made to absorb and emanate light. So I think this is interesting. That just gives us, we didn't really have slides to prepare this or to go into deep talk about this, but I mean, this is what we see happening with Moses, and we also see this happen later with Yeshua in Luke chapter 9.
And the moon and sun are similar cases also too, because I think there's a verse from Enoch that we didn't really get into, which I wish we would have, talking about how the sun's light pours into the moon. Now it doesn't talk about the moon reflecting that sun's light, but it talks about it in the sense of charging it, kind of like, you know, those glow in the dark stickers. You hold them up against the light, and then for a period of time they'll glow brighter after holding it up against that light. I think of the moon in that sense, and that's a lot like what NASA just said, that it literally glows in the dark in the absence of sunshine and so-called earthshine.
That's right. And yet maybe Yaakov Natsarim is saying, and women do glow when they're creating a baby inside of her.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Maybe get that pregnancy glow. I know that some women do. That's fine. But it's interesting though, because don't they tell us that there's I mean, obviously with the phases of the moon, we see it gets diminished as in light, and then when Enoch says it's full and all the 14 parts have been transferred to it from the sun, then it's full, right? It's shining its brightest that it's going to shine. And so I think that's interesting because men and women, we go through phases every month too, biologically.
Yes.
You know, and we can deal with some sadness some days, but other days we're just shining. You know, it just depends on what phase you're in. In fact, anyway, we won't get too far away from that. So did you want to look at the scientist video from the 60s?
Yeah, absolutely.
His theories on the moon?
Yeah, his name is R. Foster. He's, I think this was from 1965. This was presented on the Australian ABC network. And he had some very interesting things to say, and it was right there before the alleged moon landings were about to take off. So let's check it out.
Oh, so right before NASA's major propaganda came out, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Let's see what he has to say.
See, here is the sea, Mr. Sanders, so calm and apparently unchanging. And yet it is part of my new conception about the nature of the world at this same sea. Many times in the past history of our Earth has rolled over the surfaces of the land masses, sweeping away all life and vegetation and eventually returning again to its former bed.
This is the part of the biblical theory of the flood and the theory of people of other races.
Oh yes, this actual event, the last one, is recorded in all the sacred scriptures of all the old civilizations, from the Hindus to the Bible.
Mr. Foster, before we go on with that, you've made a number of predictions, scientific predictions, which you claim have come true. Now, what are those predictions, and how do you make this claim?
Well, they're all based on the new notion that the physical invariance principles of contemporary science are invalid. And I stated this first in a manuscript reviewed in Australia in 1954. And the validity of this statement was confirmed finally last year at Princeton, when the principle of time reversal invariance was found to be invalid.
Well, who accepts the fact that you have made these predictions accurately?
Well, the facts as such are undeniable and must be accepted because they're documented. And it was accepted at such at Oxford, at Tasmanian University, and also at the National University. The facts as such are accepted, but the explanations and the new views as yet are not.
Do you mean to say that you reject all the basic principles of science established since Aristotle's day?
No, it does not mean that. I state and maintain that those concepts and interpretations of science, which are still based today on Aristotelian logic, have a certain purpose, but that is defined by a statement as that a spade is a spade or a fine chisel is a fine chisel. But these concepts are inadequate for a complete understanding of the real nature of the world.
How is it possible, Mr. Foster, that you as an individual can work out these theories when all the other established scientists have computers and all the money of governments behind them, and yet they apparently can't?
Well, I do not claim at all that it is due to my own intellect or to my own penetration. I have been deeply interested from early youth in the real nature of the world, and I held my own views and ideas. But many years ago, about 14 years ago, when I was challenging one of the fundamental conventional principles of science, I had a definite inspiration, not knowledge as such, but an indication and a guidance which I followed, on which I worked very hard and to evolve into a new structure of understanding.
Inspirations are related to thoughts of genius. Do you think or consider yourself to be a genius?
No. I consider myself to be an ordinary, humble person who wants to serve mankind with what man has striven for from the beginning of consciousness, with truth and understanding of the world.
Well, now, one thing, you have a theory about the moon, and we expect to be able to get observable facts about the moon fairly soon. What is your theory?
Well, it is by now rather more than a theory. 10 or 11 years ago, I stated to various scientists that the moon is not a piece of rock, but it is a plasma phenomenon, cosmic plasma, and that this fact will eventually be confirmed. I made certain predictions which were already confirmed in 1958, and the situation now is coming close to a complete confirmation.
What will be the result if you're proved to be correct in your theories?
The result will be profound and decisive, because it will give proof that a complete reinvestigation of the laws of nature is necessary. Because if the moon is a plasma, no man will ever land on it. The soft landing attempts will all fail. That means that the mass of the moon is less, far less, than is currently assumed. It's in a different state of energy, and it has far less mass. That means there is no more explanation for the tides. If the moon, for example, had only a thousandth part of its current mass, then the tides would only be 2 inches high, and the conventional theories instead of sometimes 14 feet. And that means that if it is proved that the moon is a plasma, then all gravitational theories are out, and a new concept of the cosmos and of its laws has to be evolved.
Aren't you being a bit adventurous, though, because you know we're going to be able to test out your theories on the moon fairly soon?
Well, not anymore. 11 years ago, of course, it was rather taking a risk. I was considered a lunatic, of course, but by now the evidence, accumulated evidence, is already so much in my favor that I'm not taking any risks anymore. On the contrary, there is scientific views expressed all over the world now that the moon seems to be of a quite different nature of what was assumed.
But the Americans and Russians are thinking of landing men on it.
Well, that will never happen. Not on the moon. On Mars, on Venus, on other planets, yes, but the moon is definitely, as I assert, a plasma.
Isn't there a slight contradiction? You mentioned the moon and the tides, Mr. Foster, and at the earlier part of the interview you talked about the tides sweeping over the Earth.
Well, there is no contradiction there, because once the moon is proven not to be a piece of rock, but something of far less mass, and the gravitational theories are out and discarded, new concepts have to be involved which will show that the lawfulness of nature in the cosmos is identical to that in a hydrogen atom or in atomic processes. And when this is understood and worked out in full, it will be found that the physical processes of the Earth are quite different in geophysics of what is present assumed, and that lawfully in certain periods, mostly during the ice ages, which occur every 200 million years, and there is a reason for that, the axis of the Earth suddenly tilts over. And when this happens, then you get the floods of the Bible, which were recorded before. The tides, the ordinary everyday tides, have an explanation, even if the moon had almost no mass at all, because they are field effects. They're induced by cosmic pressures which exist in the field of our solar system.
What's the benefit to mankind in your theories?
Well, the first one, and the most important I would briefly put down, is this. I think it is a new conception about the nature of the cosmic world and about the nature and the veracity of consciousness, conscience, of morality. At present, we have a glaring contradiction in the assertions of fundamental science. Scientists assert that they are completely uninhibited in their pursuit of truth, that they're completely uninhibited in their pronouncements, and that they produce for mankind, out of their knowledge or understanding, means which man can use according to his moral nature. So if the scientist produces a television set or a jet motor car, or a hydrogen bomb, it is up to the common man then to use it in a manner which he finds according to his human nature. Yet, the very same processes of dialectics of science also declare that morality, concept of man's moral nature, is an illusion, that it is merely behaviorism or something due to conditioned reflexes or to herd instinct. And this, of course, is a contradiction which must be resolved and must go out. And it will be found as a consequence, what I had the privilege to see and to experience in my mind, that there is a moral law in the universe in which we partake, and which is binding on us, and which is decisive on our future. Now, in the practical aspects, when it is understood that the geophysical laws are quite different, and that this tipping over of the Earth's axis has occurred often, suddenly in the past, and will occur again, if the new view is elaborated, and I will not live long enough anymore to do that, it will be understood that the speed of light is not a universal constant, as it is now the foundation of science, that it is changeable. And that perhaps 50 years before the next change of axis, there will be an increase in the speed of light. And if scientists will work out why and how, then there will be sufficient warning that mankind can prepare itself. Instead of building atom bomb shelters and hydrogen bombs by the millions, we will build provisions of making humanity floatable and to survive this crisis. So it comes again to the age-old concept that truth is the guidance, the hope, and the directive of the human mind, and that man must strive to understand and to know the real nature of the world.
How interesting. If Austin Whitsitt were here, he would say that guy was ladling gravy. We need to get some biscuits. Because now you can ignore, obviously the mentions of millions of years, the axis tilt, the idea that we could land on planets. So he mentioned a few things there that we wouldn't necessarily agree with. Right. However, that guy was onto something. I don't think that he understood and came to terms with the fullness of the creation model. I would theorize that he was probably a geocentrist, because he kept speaking in ways that he was kind of hinting at there's a nature to this universe that people don't, really accept. What else was that guy talking about? He definitely said, he scoffed at the idea of man landing on the moon. I love that the interviewer kind of went through some of the same basic things that we hear often in this day and time. He was like, so do you disregard all of science? Right? We hear that all the time. He was like, what's the benefit to mankind? we hear that when people are asking, how is it benefiting anybody to lie?
Yeah. Why would they lie? That's basically the nice way he was saying, why would they lie?
Right. And so we hear a lot of the same things. There's truly nothing new under the sun or the moon.
Yeah, that's right. I thought it was interesting that given his other forms of indoctrination, being thinking that we lived on a ball in space, thinking that evolution was a thing, he was brave enough to go off of what he had researched to boldly declare the moon is not a rock in space. Whatever it is, he still thought it was in space, unfortunately, but he was like, look, what we can test and observe, it's not a rock. So that, to me, we don't agree with everything he said, but I give him props for at least being able to be brave enough to go against the grain, even way back then. Because guys, I know that they, back in the 50s, bro, it was super nationalism. Like we're on the end of World War II. Like they had, they're ramping up their programming and their nationalism through media and film in the 1950s. And so for him to come out against the grain in that day, it still took some guts. So interesting perspective. Yeah. They had just finished Operation Paperclip, bringing over all the Nazi German scientists to form NASA. And so he was dealing with a lot of that. And I thought it was interesting. He was like, 10, 11 years ago, it would have been risky for him at that time to have came out with those claims. But he said the evidence had been pouring into his favor. And so somebody asked in the chat, what is plasma? There's the plasma that makes up the majority of our blood, but apparently in physics, an electrically conducting medium in which there are roughly equal numbers of positively and negatively charged particles produced when the atoms in a gas become ionized. So it's a gas usually, and I think they put the same thing in those Tesla balls, the plasma balls that you see in the back of Frankenstein movies that you put your hands on, like we have in the intro. So plasma causes an electric current through a gas. Yes. Yeah. And it's actually the fundamental thing supposedly in all things. His supposed plasma is the fundamental matter that makes up all things. And there's been a lot of I actually did a video on one of these guys, Hans Alvin, from the 1979. He actually won the Nobel Peace Prize on his work on plasma. Because he was trying to express that all of physics and creation is built on this fourth substance called plasma, but it's always ignored. And his Nobel Prize winning book was ignored by the astrophysicist community because it debunks all their models, which are built upon the speed of light, just as this guy in the clip talked about.
Yeah, and it refutes Einstein's, relativity that he put forth, where he tried to denounce the so-called ether plasma.
Because that's built off the gravitational models that this gentleman in the clip you just saw also said is bunk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did. That was cool. He definitely talked about the tides and how even, regardless of the moon, there are electrical magnetic phenomenon that happen that pull the tides as they do. And I would speculate that the sun and moon, their circuit in the vault of heaven, and the electromagnetic wake that they pull along with them does have an effect, but it's not a gravitational pull.
No. Yeah. But yeah, it definitely would easily create the tides, from what I understand. It gets a little bit more complicated. That's a very surface level statement. But
true.
Speaking of electromagnetic phenomenons,
what you got?
We need to talk about the lunar eclipses.
We do. We should. Yeah. These are things that happen annually, right? Like in different places of the world. We don't always see them here in the United States. Yeah. But there are lunar eclipses that happen, and over 50 times since the 15th century, with some of the most recent being like, I think 2017, there was one of these, 2011, there was one of these. The sun and eclipse moon over 50 times has been seen to be present above the horizon during the lunar eclipse event. Okay, so you got the official explanation that they give us, though. Are we going to do have a slide for that? Cool.
Well, this is what the moon ends up looking like during an eclipse. It goes through these phases, right, where it slowly goes from bright white to this darker orange into red. But the problem with their model is they claim this, right? They claim that the sun is shining on one side of the moon, one side of the earth, and the moon is diametrically opposite on the other side of the earth, creating this strange refractive shadow.
And that the earth has passed between the moon and the sun, causing the shadow to cast over the moon, producing this red glow. So nowhere in my experience of recorded history that I know of that do shadows glow. Shadows usually block the light.
Yeah. By the way, just for everyone watching, if you look at the very bottom, this is directly from NASA, this image you're looking on the screen here. This is NASA's explanation of what causes a lunar eclipse. Mm-hmm. So they think that the sun's light shines on the earth, and that gets hit on the edges of the atmosphere of the earth. Part of it, there's blue light scattering is scattered by the earth's atmosphere, but then somewhere comes this red light refractive scattering.
Yeah.
Also, but here's the funny part about the first thing that just struck me, Wes, when I was looking at this graphic, and I'm like, what in the world are these people thinking? Because the sun is never this big. The sun is the same size as the moon in our sky,
just like Enoch tells us they are.
Right. So even in their model, this is not to scale. The only reason the sun is bigger in this little fake model here of their solar system
to fit it in the picture.
Yeah, it gives you an illusion that the sun's rays would do this. I don't believe that we can't observe this, by the way, an actual phenomenon with this atmospheric red and blue light scattering to create a red haze upon the moon 238,000 miles away. Not only is none of that possible, but the size of the sun is not even correct for their own model.
No, but it does certainly fit well with this little design that they have in the shadows and the color.
Oh, what's that? What is this?
Is this the sigil? The sigil? How do they call it?
Yeah, the sigil. It's the seal of Satan.
It looks familiar. Guys.
It does look familiar, especially if you turn it sideways and you put it right up to the actual pattern of the eclipse of the moon.
Why would they want to put that in plain sight?
That's crazy.
It's crazy. It is. It's like,
so guys, this is just like they did moon and sun worship in the ancient pagan religions. Their explanation for an actual lunar eclipse, and we're gonna talk about selenelions because those debunk lunar eclipses because those are not even according to this model you just looked at. This model you just looked at says that the sun and the moon are equally opposite on each side of the earth, so that the Earth is in between them to create this refractive red haze that would go across the surface of the moon.
And brother, doesn't this happen every night? The idea that the moon is on the other side of the Earth? That's the biggest thing that I feel like people miss is, hold on. If they say this is how a lunar eclipse is caused, then what about the moon in the nighttime sky on this other side of the alleged sphere where the sun is out of view? Wouldn't it be the same thing every night?
Yeah, even if it doesn't give you a full blanketing in their model, even if it didn't give you a full red blanketing of the moon, you would see this happening at some point because of the way that moon and sun don't flow at the same speeds and are oftentimes on opposite sides of this plane of the Earth. So in their model, you would have lots and lots of partial lunar eclipses, right? But you don't.
No.
And this actual explanation of a full lunar eclipse is not observed in anything else on Earth as far as red light refractive scattering like this. It's just because apparently the blue light goes away. It's just red light at that point. And unfortunately, and even more so, apparently a shadow can project itself 238,000 miles away. Did you guys know that?
And yeah, that's the solar eclipse though, because there's a smaller shadow. It doesn't make any sense. None of their eclipse models makes sense here.
None of it makes sense.
But we do see that. You can get it on Google.
Oh yeah, by the way, this is the sigil of Lucifer. This is the exact design that they're trying to make up. They fabricated their own model's dimensions in order to show you that graph for a lunar eclipse. It's just the seal of Satan. Oh, and other companies use it, by the way, too, just in case you didn't know.
Sure do.
Yes, but ultimately, we have a quick clip that we want to show because this is someone that he stayed up all night. Wes, this is great.
Yeah,
the guy stayed up all night. He wanted to film this lunar eclipse that was happening at daybreak. He's like, it's really cold. He's out there with his girlfriend filming, and he wants to show people, all right, guys, the sun's over there, the moon's over here, and it's beautiful, guys. The moon's going down as the sun's going to come up, and we're going to get to see this, the lunar eclipse start to happen, right? Think about this. The sun's coming up. The moon's going down. Okay? So, Wes, if the solar eclipse model was true, or the lunar eclipse model was true, which way would the lunar shadow start happening on the moon?
Let's just show the people. Let them see themselves. All right.
All right. Hope you guys can catch up with this. Where'd it go?
It's better with the visual. Makes more sense.
Recording? Am I on?
Yes.
Am I on?
Shush.
So it's December 10th, about 6:30 in the morning. It's about 18 degrees out here, and we're standing on top of Cahokia Mounds, just east of St. Louis. Behind me is a full moon, which will soon be going into a full lunar eclipse as it sets, kind of a rare experience, while at the same time behind us, the sun is already beginning to rise. So this could be a very interesting and beautiful experience. Oh, am I on? Okay. So it's about 6:55, and as you can see, we're getting a little bit brighter out here. You can see the shadow creeping across the moon. It's a little hard to see, I'm sure, in the camera, but from here we can see it nice and clearly. It's about a third of the way covered. The moon's starting to turn nice and orange. Over my right shoulder, you can see downtown St. Louis and the nice early morning sun, which is getting very bright on the eastern horizon behind us. Yeah, we'll get that in there again. So you can see it's practically day here, yet we still have the full moon out, which is slowly eclipsing. And it's still cold.
Real quick, Wes, why isn't everything bathed in red at this point? If the sun is right over the horizon, why isn't all of our morning light just completely as red as the lunar eclipse moon every single morning? But it's not. It's there's a tint you get of a redder sun as it goes in through the atmosphere, but it still doesn't even bathe everything in red every single night and morning. This is the craziest thing ever. Okay,
it really is. They try to tell us that it's caused by Earth shine reflecting back onto the moon, but the big thing is that doesn't happen when there's a quote unquote new moon.
That's right.
There's this Earth shine causing this red light scattering, cast onto the face of the moon, and they say that's what it's causing it. However, where's the earth shine when the new moon happens, when there's nothing to be seen?
They just lose track of it. It's crazy. Maybe Mythbusters can try to reflect their laser off that little mirror on the moon during the new moon and see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's now about 7:04 a.m. and over my shoulder you probably cannot see anything, but through the stacks of the refinery back there, we can just barely make out a little bit of the moon left. It's about 2/3 way covered with earth shadow, and it's turning a sort of pale orange, pinkish color. But with the bright morning sun coming up, there's not enough contrast to be able to see the moon there. We can still see it just a little bit. What I find very interesting is I was expecting the shadow to come upward across the moon as it would go down and it would pass into shadow, and actually it's going the other way around. The shadow, as the moon is here, the shadow is creeping down across the moon, even though the sun's coming up over here, and that must be because of the moon's rotation around the earth. It's moving farther up, even though the sun's light is actually coming from over there. It's actually coming underneath the earth. So if you imagine the sun is here, the earth is here, and the moon is back here, and this light was coming under the earth, but the moon must be rotating around even though we're turning, so it looks like the moon is going down. It's kind of an optical illusion. It's pretty cool.
Is it,
guys? Oh my goodness, guys! So he's literally watching. The sun and the moon are both above the horizon, and he's literally watching the moon, the shadow of the eclipse of the moon, happening from the top of the moon going down, and he's trying to make up an explanation for it, thinking, "Oh, maybe the sun's light is going underneath the earth." And that's what's caught in that the refraction because of the rotation of it. Like it's just.
Meanwhile, they can still see the sun above the horizon.
They can still see it. Like this is crazy. This is what your mind does to make up an excuse when you don't have any other options. So this is why Wes and I are committed, passionate, and dedicated to bringing the true biblical cosmological option for people to consider, because suddenly they'll understand truth.
Yeah. Things start to make a lot more sense when you don't have all the confusion of lies.
That's right.
7:08. I'm sorry, the sun will rise at 7:08. The moon is scheduled to set at 7:08. So exact same time. So we might actually catch a glimpse of both for a brief moment as the moon is disappearing. Okay. Let's see. Go ahead. You're on. We're on again. Well, it is now officially 7:08, and if you look behind us, the sun is just starting to peek up over the trees. We can't quite see the sun, and behind us, yeah, the moon has pretty much disappeared into eclipse, but otherwise it would be setting right now, but it has been fully eclipsed for just a few minutes, so it disappeared just a couple minutes ago. And you can just see a sliver of the sun through the trees there. You see it now? Can you see it in the camera? Zoom.
It's right there.
There's a tiny little sliver of bright.
Bro, the moon is like way above the horizon.
The sun is peeking up, and that's of course
way.
I said it backwards. The sun's rising there, yeah.
Which means there's been like 30 minutes of it
this direction,
still descending.
The other direction from me is where the moon is, so they're in a perfect line.
And the eclipse has been happening for like 30 minutes.
If we drew a line from
top
edge
down
to the earth to the moon,
Listen.
it would be a nice, perfect straight line. Of
No,
course,
it's
if
not.
it wasn't, they wouldn't be in line.
Right.
We wouldn't be having a lunar eclipse. So. I think that's it. It's warmed up just a little bit. It's
You
probably
could
up to
see
at least
that they
20
weren't in
degrees
line.
now. You can definitely see the sun coming up now if you want to get one last little shot of that. Just a little blip there.
So now,
and
why isn't the moon fully illuminated?
That's it. That was
Right.
an amazing experience.
Exactly.
Of the sunrise and the lunar eclipse at the same time. Good morning.
Father, help us. And I don't think that's what Mike Maranatha was singing about when he said top down. But this, that's what the links the mind will go to make excuses because they've never been told the truth. So guys, help us get the truth out. Hit that like button, share this video if you're liking our content. Really, I mean, this kind of stuff is too easy to disprove and show that there's lies everywhere because the math doesn't work, their dimensions, their scales don't work. Like this is literally a lie perpetrated on mass society. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'll stop.
You're okay. Yeah, I just hope that we did a good job explaining what we were looking at there because, yeah, when they say the sun, earth, the moon in line causes the lunar eclipse, yet we see that lunar eclipse happen when both the sun and the moon are up visible above the horizon in the same sky. And then that shadow, which according to their model should have been moving from the bottom to the top,
Yeah.
During a lunar eclipse, it's the opposite that we see. So none of it's happening the way they say it is.
That's right. And when you zoom in with the high-powered camera, you see the background behind me. You guys see this?
Mm-hmm.
So even though it looked fuzzy in that photo, that bad quality video you just saw, but once you have a high-powered lens and you zoom in on a lunar eclipse happening, this is not a shadow, guys. The body of the moon itself is changing colors from within itself, and it's happening slowly, creeping across the face of the moon. And the one that I saw in 2016, Wes, I had someone that was texting me at the time saying, because I was trying to flat smack them. And so they were texting me and they were trying to say, look, I'm at a lunar eclipse watch party right now with a bunch of astronomers and telescopes. And I'm like, oh, sweet. Did you notice how the shadow is going from the wrong direction? It's going left to right instead of from right to left.
Yeah.
And they just stopped texting me at that point.
Of course. Shut down.
It's so sad. It's so sad. Now, okay. So, last thing we really wanted to get to, there's been a unique observation that people have been debating. And it's this thing about when people take a high-powered telescope and they look at the moon for long periods of time, they're starting to notice what they think or what they interpret to be waves rolling across the surface of the moon. What are your thoughts on this, brother?
Oh, brother, I'm on the fence. I've heard some different explanations. Really, let's see. On one end, you got people considering that there's the waters above the firmament and that the moon would be, according to this explanation, above those waters, in the waters either way, that when you see this, you're seeing a ripple, like if you were to toss a stone into the lake, that you see that ripple coming out from where the impact of it happened, or just you got the waters moving around, you're seeing little ripples.
Right.
And so some people speculate that's what's happening. On the other hand, there's people that are noticing that the atmosphere contained in the heaven where the birds fly underneath the vault, that it has fluidic a nature about it that has fluid like
technically it is water
effects. That there's wakes happening as a result of passing by planes, vehicles in the air that would then cause a atmospheric wake behind it, and that this could cause a disturbance in a ripple similar to that lake in the stone in the lake. And so that could be what's causing it. And the reason some people speculate this is that we often see these same phenomena that some people call the lunar wave right after a plane passes by.
Sure.
So I'm not positive.
You're on the fence about it. So there's a gentleman out there that his name is Crow777. He's had his first YouTube channel, which reached, I think it was like 178,000 people, 178,000 subs. It was taken down. Now he's got a second channel up, and he's also on other platforms at this point as well. And he's an amateur astronomer with a professional telescope that he's been staring at the moon for like 10 years now. And because that's what he does. He leaves it up all night. He films it for long periods of time. And he started noticing this thing about what looks like a lunar wave, what looks like a ripple effect of water going across the surface of the moon, or at least passing in front of the moon. He started noticing this in 2011, and he's been documenting its occurrence for the last 10 years. So we actually have one of his videos, and the reason I'm on the fence about it too, I'll be honest with you, I'm probably 80-20. I don't know if that's, so maybe I got like my pant leg snagged on the barbed wire of the fence and I'm hanging off. But the point is, like, I'm 80% thinking that we are looking through, that the moon itself, according to episode 1 that we did, we expressed the multiple 7 different layers of the firmament that the biblical scriptures describe that the creator made, that the sun, moon, and stars, that the moon, from my understanding, make perfect sense if it was plasma and it was sitting in the actual waters between the first and second layer of firmament, causing it to grow with light and diminish with light because of the setting that it's in. That's what keeps it. Anyway, I'm not getting too detailed, but that's my theory on why I would think that I'm 80% thinking that it actually is sitting in the water. Mm-hmm. So this clip I'm going to show you this is actually shown on this guy's channel, but someone else recorded this in Germany. And this, I think, was from, 2017. So there's been more than one person observing this all across the plane of the earth. And I just wanted to kind of show this is very interesting part right here. just skip forward a little bit.
I took
Can you
filters and I
enlarge it at all?
tried to mask out the moon.
This is actually a little bitty piece. Yeah, I can enlarge it there.
And manipulate the sky with noise and stuff, but it's just too dark outside the moon for it to make a difference.
Boom.
But this is the footage that I have manipulated, enlarged, sharpened, all kinds of stuff. And what's astounding is this is the first view that we've had of the lip of the moon, the limb of the moon, that really shows the angle of this wave traveling across and kind of giving you the appearance that you're looking through a glass of water almost.
So the reason why I'm showing this particular clip, because this one is zoomed in on the curvature of the moon, and it seems, Wes, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the wave is following the curvature of the moon, as opposed to being, if it was just our atmosphere being affected by the afterburn of a plane, that should be a straight line that we would see passing over in a straight angle. But this particular lunar wave, it looks like it's passing over the surface of the curvature of the moon.
But this is the footage that I have manipulated, enlarged, sharpened, all kinds of stuff. And what's astounding is this is the first view that we've had of the lip of the moon, the limb of the moon, that really shows the angle of this wave traveling across and kind of giving you the appearance that you're looking through a glass of water almost. In the 2012 footage that I have posted, you can see that the features of the moon are slightly offset as the wave passes. Now you're going to see an arrow pop up in the lower right. Keep an eye there. That's where there it goes. The last little sweep of the wave is caught as he pans down. I'm going to run just a couple more seconds here, and then I'm going to shorten down the clip to just the wave and run some filters so that we can get just a couple more good views. And thank you again, Earl, for taking the time to get
when
the
you
raw
lose it,
footage
they're so
out to
hard
me
to
and
see.
giving their permission to run
There's
it.
one. Okay.
Comes the wave
So
on
you're
the
saying
left.
that it
We're
looks as
running
if it's
sharpening,
uniform
find
across.
edges, blend throughs, all kinds
No,
of
so
stuff to try to
what I
So
see
what-
when I see
so
like a
up and
uniform
over.
ripple, and you're saying that you think it's conforming to the surface of the moon.
It looks, especially when he puts it in the infrared right here, it looks like you don't see the wave extending above the surface of the moon, that it is conforming to the actual curvature of the moon. I mean, and here it is with the black and white. It's crazy, man.
It really could be either way. I can't say one way or the other.
as the wave passes over lunar features.
I know there's all kinds of refraction, like you think about when you put a pencil in a glass of water, a clear glass, you can see where there's like a separation because of the way the water bends the light.
Yeah.
Almost a 600% zoom just on the,
So it's hard to say.
to really show the angle of that wave poking up.
Yeah, it seems like it's going up and down the curvature of the moon from this particular angle. So when he turns on the black and white right here, or not this moment right here, it's almost in the white space. It's almost if it was a wave that we're just looking through in the atmosphere, you'd see that line of ripple extend past the surface of the moon up to the top of the screen. But I don't know. It's hard to say, man. I do know there's waters
and we
above.
should fight about it. No, I'm just
There we go. That's it. Our first uncommon ground boxing exhibition. It'd be great.
No, I love you, even though we don't even really disagree here because there's no way.
There's something happening. There's. I mean, here's the thing that we do understand from the scriptures is that there is between us and the moon. There's water. We definitely know that. From everything that we've been trying to show with our episodes, Wes and I do not purport to teach the idea that Scripture says the sun and moon are underneath the firmament layer that encloses us. We think that the sun and moon are in their own layers of firmament above the layer that encloses us, which is why there are 7 layers. Each layer has a different purpose. So with that said, we also know between directly above our layer, according to Genesis chapter 1 and Jubilees 2, there's actual water directly above our layer. So when we look up and we see the sun, moon, and stars, regardless of their exact placement, we are looking through water at the sun, moon, and stars. And to me, I've always thought this was a perfect explanation for the sun radiating an immense amount of heat and that being buffered through this layer of water.
Makes sense.
So that it's tempered by the time it reaches us into our little enclosure. So that, again, I can't test that. That's just something that I theorize. But anyway, that's the lunar wave idea. People have been filming it all across the world for 10 years now because they're actually starting to look at the moon. And you know what's really interesting, Wes? I was listening to this. Unfortunately, I don't have the clip. I apologize. So just guys, you'll have to take my word for it. But I was listening to this broadcast about a guy who said he worked at an observatory, and they were saying that there was only, so let me put it like this: the big observatories with big telescopes.
Mhm.
He was saying that they didn't have free permission to just get on the telescope and look at the moon. They had like specific set times they were allowed to look at the moon, and they had to, and it was all permission based.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not,
How
that shouldn't
strange.
be. That shouldn't
No.
be, right? You can look at the stars anytime you want, but don't pin it over to the moon. Don't look at the moon with that high powered telescope
So
that's the
silly,
size of the
'cause we
building.
yeah, exactly. I mean, we can go and buy, it's not cheap, but we can go and buy a Nikon P1000 125 times digital zoom where you can get uncomfortably close to the moon and like see, a lot. And so how long ago was that? Must have been a little while back.
I didn't hear the exact date when they worked at the observatory, but yeah, it's weird, man. That's a weird restriction.
I saw, in doing research for this episode, I looked at a couple different astrophotographers and different guys, and even in the NASA technical reports, there was a list of through a span of a couple centuries at least, where they just showed a bunch of different notes that people had made about the phenomena they were observing when they were looking at the moon. And there was lots of strange reports about people seeing what they thought to be stars shining through the moon. Okay. There were times where people would say, when they were expecting a star to be occulted by the moon as it would pass behind it, they would just seem to glide over the surface of it. And there were lots of people, even one of the astrophotographers I saw on Facebook, talking about how he would notice the shadows of what appears to be shadows in the so-called craters of the moon's surface would vary day to day, and there would be some variations in the physical texture and what appears to be the surface of the moon. So it's a unique creature.
Perfect sense if it's plasma. That would make perfect sense. The minute details would change as it illuminates with power, but the general the potholes, if you will, the general shapes and structures would be the same, but the minute details would definitely change if it was plasma.
It would. Something we didn't have time to talk about tonight, and something that I want to send to you, Sean, and I encouraged other people to look at it. There's a lot of people talking about this right now, but we didn't, can't get into it tonight, but they were talking about how it appears that there's a map on the moon. Have you heard of this?
I haven't heard about this.
No. I know David Weiss, right, deep inside the rabbit hole. He's been talking about it on people's channels, but it's really interesting, and there's some guys that have mapped out what overwhelmingly really seems like the countries in these so-called craters and the colorations of the moon, and they've pinpointed a lot of like lakes and really minute details. So it's really some interesting stuff. I've never contemplated the idea of.
So, wait, back up. What do you mean, like the countries? What do you say this again?
We'd have to play the video. I shouldn't have even brought it up, but you see on here how there's these discolorations and the so-called craters,
which is weird because they're black at night and they're blue during the day.
Correct. So right. Almost as if it's translucent, maybe allowing something shine through it. But nonetheless, these people have taken it. They say if you flip the image, flip the mirror image, you have now a map of the world.
Oh, of our continents, of our land masses.
Yeah.
Okay, my bad.
You're good.
Okay.
You haven't seen this. That's we gotta take a look at that because it's wild stuff. And it really, I thought it was silly at first, and then I looked at what they were presenting and how the guys have mapped it out, and it's really, there's some overwhelming evidence that it could be some reality there to it.
Well, whether or not it's, but how does that, is that post-flood or pre-flood geography?
Right.
So
they're saying that it's almost like a reflection of the world map being, I don't know, I guess like portrayed onto the surface of the moon or something.
Yeah.
But I can neither confirm nor deny it. So I don't know.
I'm not one to go too deep on this thought, but it makes me think of Yahweh, being like, I call heaven and earth to witness against you. And then also the Testament of Levi, chapter 2,
says the sun
about
and moon.
the firmament and holding the sins, recording in some regard the sins, but also we know the angels are tasked to record the sins as well. So yeah, it's interesting, man. That's really interesting. I have to check into that.
Yep. Absolutely.
But you know what? Did you know that we actually have some unique footage of the NASA landing on the moon? Did you realize that?
No. We do?
Yeah, it's crazy. Watch, it's right here. This is that was the untold story of Neil and Buzz right when they got trying to get to the moon, 1960 something. Yeah, that was it right there.
I think that was really just in the buoyancy lab. That looked like a swimming pool. I'm not sure, bro.
Yeah, that was their first test run in the buoyancy lab.
Yeah, they turned the wave machine on and I forgot.
And do you remember that movie, that little metal automaton droid running through the water trying to get away?
That's hilarious. I can't be programmed because I'm not an automaton. So,
yeah. In fact, speaking of Interstellar, let's look at what's it called? The poster. Have you ever seen the poster?
Mm-mm.
Interstellar. Oh, it's juicy.
Yeah, I think it's been a while, but I might remember what you're talking about vaguely. The movie poster of the movie Interstellar.
It's so funny. I can't even find it on Google. It's crazy. It's not even pulling up.
What was it?
Yeah. Well, it's just filled with symbolism. Filled with a ton of symbolism about puncturing through the firmament.
In that same movie, wasn't it, where the is it Matthew McConaughey? He sits down with somebody and a lady tells him that the moon landing was faked. And she was like, it was a brilliant piece of propaganda, but I don't believe that really happened. Yeah.
They did say that. Actually, here it is. I'll put it up real quick. No, this actually isn't it, but they've taken the poster and they added some stuff to it, but at least you get the general premise.
Okay.
But this is definitely it right here. Oh. So you got the rocket going through the earth, but it makes it more like it's going past the firmament into the water.
Exactly. They only have like that outline of what appears to be a dome over their heads almost.
Yeah, it's crazy. So much propaganda, so much nonsense from the enemy. Just like we saw tonight with their depiction, their wrong model to scale depiction of lunar eclipses, which is only just the seal of Satan that they're showing you. Crazy, guys. Crazy stuff.
You know what I'm looking forward to? Next week, we got a cool topic, right?
It's exciting. It's so exciting. I have no words. I'm just going to play our teaser for it because it's great.
Okay, cool.
It's great.
Let's play it up. Shout out Mikey Jenny.
6,000 satellites around Earth. Only about 40% are operational.
What they do? 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 What they what they what they what they do?
Where they at though? I love putting that together. Shout out to Mikey Jenny at Truth to the Youth over at Little Light Studios. He made something probably like 3-4 years ago at least now, where he put together some clips and I had to update it. So he gave me that idea. You're on mute, brother. There you go.
Yeah, that's hilarious. That's next week, Satelloons. And we're going to discuss them because, that's we want you guys to have an opportunity when people are talking about this and you're trying to explain them the scriptures and they're like, yeah, but satellites, man, satellites are in space. What do you think? Satellites aren't real? You're like, oh, man, I got a great thing for you to watch. Great episode for you to watch. And that'll be our episode next week.
Yeah, we're gonna have to figure out how some scripture can tie in, but we will.
Yeah, that's. I mean, unless you're imagining angels just dodging satellites on their way down to mankind, but other than that,
where they at though?
Yeah, where exactly? You ever think like some of those fallen satellites that they found on people's land? Do you ever think an angel just grabs one and just hurls it down to the sky, down to the ground, just for fun on his way down on a mission?
This really is. Look.
Yeah, he gets back to heaven, and the angel in charge of him was like, "Did great. You fulfilled your mission, but please stop throwing satellites to the ground. You might hurt somebody."
Yeah,
he's like, "They're in my way."
I just wanted to pop the balloon.
Yes, he's full on like pointing his wings and just flying through it like a cannon. It'd be great. It'd be great.
Legit. Absolutely.
So-
Did you notice the title though? It said Satellites and Satelloons.
That's true.
There it is.
They are. It's been a long-standing lie. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, and we'll probably talk about this next week, I think there was some science fiction novels that talked about satellites even way before they were ever a reality, way before the government started making them.
That Arthur C. Clarke guy really came up with a lot of the space propaganda, or was
Yeah.
writing about it. But yeah, we'll talk all about him and
Yeah.
show from some of his stuff. But I look forward to that. Also got to say one more time, happy birthday to Miss Morgan Cadwell. Y'all go check out Wildly Unpopular on YouTube. She's also got a Facebook page created. Otherwise, if y'all would, if you like what we're doing, first and foremost, like, follow, subscribe so that the algorithms put our videos into circulation, rotation for more people to be able to see. Share the videos with your friends and family if you find what we're doing to be helpful. And, if you want other people to be blessed by what we're putting forth, we'd love it if you'd get the information out there, put it in circulation. And then we're working on a project, aren't we, Sean?
That's right. That's
We're
our
still-
Patreon's all about.
Still in the early stages of it, but we do have a Patreon going where you could go and set up a monthly subscription and get a monthly automatic draft going to be able to support the ministry, to support what we're doing in the project that we're trying to put together, because we want to bring forward a creation model with some aspects and details, working, moving pieces inside it that other people haven't put in similar models. And we want to be able to represent the fullness of what the scripture speaks about and have that so that everybody can see a hands-on kind of situation project with it. And we got some guys we're working with that we're going to get together with hopefully this Monday, Abba willing, and talk with them again. And so then we'll have some behind the scenes, more footage for the Patreon for everybody to see.
Yeah, so guys, if you haven't already checked our Patreon out, it's at the link in the video description below. If you think that what we're doing is a benefit to you, you're blessed by it, there's ways that you can support us below as well. So we appreciate everybody that's already a Patreon. We love you guys. Any last words, Wes?
Man, my takeaway is that the moon is ruling over the night. It's a luminary that God created to serve mankind, to help separate the seasons and determine the times for the feasts, something that we're still trying to figure out ourselves. But it has definitely provided lots of light on late nights when I needed it. So we thank you, God.
Yes, more than anything, all praise the Father giving us the opportunity to do this, giving us the ability to research these things. And we just ask for his protection to be able to do this as long as he allows us. So we're excited. We're going to leave you guys. Yes, in Yeshua's name, Father willing. And we also just want to let you guys step out of this episode hyped up. So this is why we're going to play one of Wes Blaze's songs, one of his originals. New song, new dance.
That's what it's called. Yeah, it's about 2 years old. Y'all enjoy. Bless God and may he bless you. Y'all have a good night. Much love.
See you next week, guys.
Sing unto the Lord a new song. Sing unto the Lord on the earth. When blaze on the big done, we have a new thing. Great thing, Irie. Yeah, man. You've been dancing with the devil for a long time. You don't want to be at the wrong place, the wrong time. Come and bring your dance moves to the dance floor where the light shine. Throw yourself a lifeline, now is the right time. You've been dancing with the devil for a long time. You don't want to be at the wrong place, the wrong time. Come and bring your dance moves to the dance floor. There's a new song. Do a new dance before you're too gone. You can go dance in the wrong part of town with the wrong ones around till it all falls down. But the right ones and the right son with the right plan. He paid the price for your life with a lifespan. He is why I'm coming to you live from a mic stand. He is the reason you got to listen to this nice jam. He got a new dance, all it takes is 2 hands. Then you fall to your knees for a new chance. Say God please, turn me to a new man. Can't nobody else love me like you can. In the name of the Christ Jesus, oh man. Then if you love him, you will follow his law, man. This is a call to all of y'all on the fall and all of y'all on the crawl, to all of y'all on the brawl. I know you see the door closing at the end of the hall, but only those that stand tall and go for it get it all. Yeah, and that's a real good feeling. Feeling like a million, you can fly up through the ceiling. Tell the devil sit on attack and defeat the villain. It's better than any billions, you can do it God willing. Yeah, come and do a new dance. Don't let nobody tell you that you can't. That's right, come and get a new chance. We sing a new song, we got a new dance. You've been dancing with the devil for a long time. You don't want to be at the wrong place, the wrong time. Come and bring your dance moves to the dance floor where the light shine. Throw yourself a lifeline, now is the right time. You've been dancing with the devil for a long time. You don't want to be at the wrong place, the wrong time. Come and bring your dance moves to the dance floor. There's a new song. Do a new dance before you're too gone. You don't want
wanna slip into the heartless darkness, so depart the parts of your heart that's darkest. Cause you don't want the mark of the heart that's tarnished. So hark the harpist of the sharpest artist. It's a message of the end days, so end your wicked ways. Get prepared to be amazed, nobody gets to stay. Better walk away from the world before you get the blaze. Better walk away from the world before you get the blaze. Be different, do different, say different things. Nothing ever changes if everything is the same. If you think different, make difference, take different lanes. Most people hate difference, break through the chains. If all we got is a dash between two dates, better learn what we're doing before we too late. Time is short and there's not enough for you to wait. God is too great, come and do a new shake. Yeah, come and do a new dance. Don't let nobody tell you that you can't. That's right, come and get a new chance. We sing a new song, we got a new dance. You've been dancing with the devil for a long time. You don't wanna be at the wrong place, the wrong time. Come and bring your dance moves to the dance floor where the light shine. Throw yourself a lifeline, now is the right time. You've been dancing with the devil for a long time. You don't wanna be at the wrong place, the wrong time. Come and bring your dance moves to the dance floor, there's a new song. Do a new dance before you're too gone. Yeah, come and do a new dance. Don't let nobody tell you that you can't. That's right, come and get a new chance. We sing a new song, we got a new dance. You've been dancing with the devil for a long time. You don't wanna be at the wrong place, the wrong time. Come and bring your dance moves to the dance floor where the light shine. Throw yourself a lifeline, now is the right time. You've been dancing with the devil for a long time. You don't wanna be at the wrong place, the wrong time. Come and bring your dance moves to the dance floor, there's a new song. Do a new dance before you're too gone.